Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, Highway to the Borderlands. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to The Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I'm Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Borderlands, which we'll be talking about today. More like Borderlands. Oh, shit.
Oh, he got him.
Fucking got him. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, you know, I had a lovely holiday. I got to visit you, John, and your lovely family, and that was, as you promised, the best Christmas gift of all.
That's right.
We ate together, we drank, we played a little pinball, squeezed a lot of fun into a couple quick days. And then, on top of that, I experienced what I must consider a Christmas miracle. I flew all the way across the country. I visited 2 cities, lots of flights, flight delays, long hours on crowded airplanes, crowded airports, and I seem to have made it home without getting sick, knock on wood, but I'm actually less sick than when I left home 2 weeks ago. So let's pray it stays this way.
Yeah, for a little insider information, my mom actually made a tincture for Ian because she was like, he's always sick.
She did. That was the sweetest thing. An unexpected gift from your mom. That was the healing potion that I needed.
Yeah, you turned a corner. And for the listeners, the fact that we're having this episode at all should prove that the visit went well. We did hint that if it went poorly, Joker might be the final episode of Blast Zone, but
it didn't bring us down. We're still rolling.
Yeah, it was a good holiday. Unfortunately, it was not without its difficulties at my home. We have routinely 2 Christmases, just trying to accommodate family members that are busy or can't make one.
Sure.
So one on Christmas Day and then usually one the weekend. But there was a miniature COVID outbreak.
Oh, no.
With some members of my extended family. So Christmas number 2 was put on the back burner for now.
Gosh. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, luckily everyone's fine now and no one in my house caught it, but it was a little scary for those few days. You're waiting to see if you get sick and trying to stay inside and not infect anyone.
Christmas is full of dangers.
And now the norovirus is around, so we got another thing to look out for.
Yeah.
I don't think it's super prevalent in the States yet, but I know it was running rampant in the UK.
Isn't that something that already is like a thing that kids are constantly passing around in school, some version of that?
I think it's like when people say, oh, the stomach flu is going around, a lot of times it is the norovirus, but
okay.
I guess it's just a particularly nasty strain and it's spreading quickly.
Yeah, they're making a big deal of this one, as if we needed more strains of this or that to be scared of. But in addition to masks, now this one is more of a wash your hands kind of avoidance strategy, right?
Yeah, I think with the stomach flu type stuff, hygiene is of the utmost importance, obviously. But everyone's good.
That's good.
We're all healthy.
Stay safe, stay healthy.
And yeah, we'll have to have another Blast Zone Summit soon. We can't let it go another like 5 years.
No.
But did you happen to watch anything in the intermittent weeks that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I sure did. I brought a show called Black Doves. It is a British spy thriller. It's on Netflix, a 6-episode series, and it's totally new as of December 2024. It stars Keira Knightley, who's great in it as a middle-aged mom who happens to also be a spy. And it also stars Ben Whishaw, who we just had on the pod. He was one of the stars of Cloud Atlas.
To be clear, he was not a guest. He was just a guy we talked about.
He was just a guy we talked about. We watched Cloud Atlas, and after watching that movie, I was not exactly a big Whishaw fan, but after watching Black Doves, I'm totally into him now. I mean, it's been a while, and he's done plenty of other stuff, but I feel like he's really found his stride in this role. He's this real sourpuss, jaded assassin guy who happens to be BFFs with Keira Knightley's character. Really cool together, and they're both really cool separately in it. The show has lots of familiar spy action and intrigue, which will satisfy genre fans, but it also has enough of a fresh story with compelling characters and cool relationships that it feels kind of unique and special and something worth watching. It's a short series, so I burned through the whole thing on the dead week between Christmas and New Year's. And even though now we're well past that, especially by the time this episode drops, the new year will be in full swing and everybody will be really busy, but I still think it's worth a watch and maybe even a quick binge of the whole thing if you get hooked into it like I did.
Yeah, how would you describe the tone? Is it like a darker thing? Is it a comedy? Is it like, what are we looking at here?
It's got humor, but it's both a relationship and family drama and an exciting spy thriller. So it gives you action and thrills. It's got some of everything.
It's crazy to hear you talk about a show where Keira Knightley plays a middle-aged woman because like over the break that week in between Christmas and New Year's, I watched a lot of movies, but also a lot of movie content and got wised to the controversy around Keira Knightley's character in Love Actually.
Oh, really?
Because she plays a newlywed who has a husband and Rick from The Walking Dead is pining after her. but he's best friends with her husband. Like, she was 17 when that movie came out.
Yeah, that's weird.
I was like, what are they doing? Like, even though she's legally an adult, that's not the lifestyle you'd expect a 17-year-old to be living in a movie. So it's a strange casting choice.
Now, I haven't seen that movie. Is she playing like 26? Or is that?
I think, yeah, I haven't seen it either, to be honest.
Okay.
So I couldn't say, but it was funny to hear you talk about her as a middle-aged woman when I was like, but she was a teenager in Love Actually, which was like 5 years ago, but no, it was 22 years ago now.
Like, I knew her as a face from Pirates and Whatnot back in the day.
I liked her in Whatnot. That was a good role.
Whatnot was pretty good. I think she got a nomination for that.
I think we have Domino on the slate coming up, which was one of her big swings and misses. I remember Bend It Like Beckham and Domino were the only two movies I can remember ever seeing her in where she wasn't dressed in a Victorian gown of some sort.
Okay.
Like, she was always in period pieces, and those are like the only two movies she was contemporary. But now with Black Doves, it looks like she's finally snapped out of the everything I do has to be a period piece.
I guess it's refreshing for that reason too. It was just cool to see her on screen. She felt like an old familiar face in a good way.
Yeah, she's a talented actor. Actually, what I'm bringing this week is another Love Actually crossover. It stars arguably the main, it's hard to say if Love Actually has a main character. I know there's 15 subplots, but certainly the star of the movie, the biggest name, I believe at the time, Hugh Grant.
He's always charming and fun, right?
No. Well, yes, because that's part of the premise of this movie, which is called Heretic. This was a fall horror release from A24 that got pretty good reviews. I was very excited to check it out because I find Hugh Grant to be charming on screen and kind of insufferable everywhere else, like interviews and
really?
just
Okay.
like, yeah, he seems like he's kind of a dick, but I also think he's leaning into that now and kind of realized it. So he's playing more villainous roles lately, Cloud Atlas notwithstanding. So he plays a gentleman who has requested more information from the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormon Church. And they send a couple missionaries to his door, and he basically doesn't let them leave. Not like in a necessarily a violent way, more of like a cat and mouse way, is trying to prey upon their desire to convert people by getting them to stay, dangling the idea that he might convert in front of their noses to get them to commit to this. But, you know, it escalates from there. I don't want to spoil anything. It's got a really good first half. The setup is very tense. He's really on his game. He does the world's worst Jar Jar Binks impression I've ever heard. It is worth watching just for that. But yeah, he's funny and very gregarious, but with a hint of threatening aura under the surface. And then I don't think the movie quite sticks the landing. I found the second half a little sloppy, a little messy in the sense where it was trying to have its cake and eat it too a little too much by straining credulity, but trying to stay grounded at the same time. But if you like horror movies, particularly cerebral horror movies, I think you could easily handle this. Not a lot of gore or jump scares at all. I'd say check it out.
Cool. It had a really good teaser trailer that I saw, which is just someone ringing a doorbell and him being slightly strange when he answers. And that setup alone makes you kind of want to see it.
Yeah, you want to see what he's up to.
What's going on in there?
And you find out.
I still want to find out, so maybe I'll have to watch it.
I hope I gave you just enough information to dangle it in front of your nose, as if I were Hugh Grant and you were a Mormon missionary.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel at this moment.
Also, I have to shout out, it's a very small cast, obviously. It's just Hugh Grant, Topher Grace, Sophie Thatcher, who I think is excellent. I'm a big fan of hers from Yellow Jackets. She's great in it. And Chloe East, who I wasn't super familiar with, but she gives a great performance too.
Nice.
But I feel like we did our show and tells for longer than normal today, and I think I know why.
We're dragging it out a little bit.
We don't want to talk about this week's movie, Borderlands.
It's time to make a run for the border.
Ian, I got to ask you, did you have any familiarity with the Borderlands franchise before we started planning this episode? What was your experience with this property?
So I knew about the games. I never played them, but I had some familiarity with what the look of that stuff was. And then I knew about the movie, and I guess, I can't remember exactly, but I guess because it didn't look good, I never even had the idea of trying to watch it. And obviously it did not do well, so it came and went pretty fast in the public consciousness. But I went into this going, okay, I know what it is. It's a video game adaptation, and not like The Last of Us where people are like, oh, this is a video game that made me cry and I can't wait till they dramatize it. This is just like, okay, it's a regular old Hollywood IP grab, and let's see what they did with it. And the answer is not that much.
They did a lot, just not a lot of it was good.
Yeah.
So I have a very different experience with the Borderlands games. I've been playing the Borderlands games since 2009 when the first game came out. I've played all of the mainline games. That's just Borderlands 1, 2, and 3. I also played the pre-sequel.
Oh.
And the only game I think I haven't played is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, which is the most recent game in the series, I believe. I know Borderlands 4 is supposed to come out in 2025 at some point.
Okay.
But Big fan of these games. I like looter shooters is how I would describe this game, where it's really about collecting gear and treasure from the enemies you fell and from the vaults you plunder. You do get to go into vaults and take stuff. But I was a little shocked, a little confused when I heard a Borderlands movie was coming, because I know there are fans that get really into the lore of Borderlands, but to me, that's always been secondary for these games. It'd be like making a Call of Duty movie.
Right.
Like, sure, they have story, but that's not why people play them. And my fears were realized. And like we were talking off mic just before this, they try to throw in some fan service, but you need a good baseline for the fan service stuff to stick.
Yeah.
And they just don't have it. So a lot of it, like when you know you're being spoon fed, it doesn't feel good.
You still need to have a reason to watch a movie more than just, I saw a version of the thing I know from the game. And I don't know if this is, I mean, there were scenes when she gets on the little tour bus and the guy has his little vending machine of weapons. I'm like, I'm sure this is how you get around in the game. Was I right about that?
You know you are, because we talked about it in person, because the first time we watched this movie, we were together.
That's right.
And I said, oh, it's from the games. One gun vending machines. And, you know, Claptrap. All the characters are from the games, but outside of a few of them, they also, I hate to be the guy who's like, it's not true to the game. But like Lilith, I think, is in her 20s in the game, like her early 20s. And her character feels like a character in her early 20s. The journey she goes on, the kind of path she takes, doesn't really suit a 55-year-old woman.
Yeah. Is this the time to open that can of worms? That's the big burden that this movie is carrying that it doesn't address, because it's metatextual. It's not the story of the movie. It's the story of the making of the movie. You had a theory that it's about Eli Roth and his enjoyment of mature women actors.
MILFs. I think he's got a thing for MILFs.
That's one way to put it.
He cast Gina Gershon as Moxie. She got them thangs out the whole time. And
that's true.
Cate Blanchett as Lilith, both very beautiful women.
Even Jamie Lee Curtis is showing off her assets in this.
Yeah, as maybe my least favorite character in the movie by far, Tanis. But yeah, it was like Eli Roth was like, I'm going to cast the people I want to see in this movie, whether they're right for the character or not. And that's what he did, because he likes MILFs.
Yeah, what a mashup. Oh, we're going to make an IP play here. We're going to do a video game movie for the kids, but it's really about the experience of women of a certain age and how they bond together. I'm like, what the? This is like Steel Magnolias meets Borderlands. I don't even know. That was the best reference I could dream up. But
I was thinking of Magnolia and I was like, what are you talking about? Until I realized Steel Magnolia is a different movie.
Different movie.
So you're talking about the power of the pussy. That's a Magnolia reference. I did not.
That one.
I'm not talking about.
Yes.
But also, like, Jamie Lee Curtis is supposed to be a parental figure to Lilith in this movie. And I think they're like 7 years apart.
Yeah, they can pull it off. But the whole decision for Cate Blanchett to be the hero, to be an action hero in this movie, a grizzled bounty hunter who fights her way through a planet of berserk bandits, is like, what are you thinking? Cate Blanchett is a treasure and a very fine actor.
One of my favorites, truly.
Like, not really an action hero. And she really struggles to be credible and just to make sense. Like, the story is bone simple. They took the video game and said, there's not much story here, so we're just going to do a real simple chosen one returns to fulfill a prophecy. But they didn't give him an ultimate goal of something noble, like defeat the Galactic Empire or save a kingdom, heal a planet. It's just your goal is to unlock a vault. It's the world's biggest loot box. And that's just video game goals. That's not movie story goals. So there's a lot wrong with this movie.
Yeah. Do you want me to get into the making of the movie so we can start to pick it apart piece by piece?
Yeah, let's try to explain how this thing happened.
When the first Borderlands game released in 2009, it was a smash hit, combining cutting-edge visuals, juvenile humor, and a focus on robust customization that gave it great replay value. It was only a matter of time until Hollywood came calling. Announced in 2015 as a Lee Winnell movie, the Borderlands film spent years in development limbo before finally gaining traction in 2020, well after the pinnacle of the game's popularity, which was probably around 2012.
Meanwhile, Sonic the Hedgehog's like, they told me it takes 30 years to make the movie.
Lionsgate tapped director Eli Roth to helm the adaptation. Known primarily for his work on horror films like Hostel and the Green Inferno, Roth's selection seemed an odd fit for the irreverent, over-the-top tone of the games. The script was also a grab bag of varying Hollywood talent, with a first draft from Aaron Berg in 2016 that was meant to be R-rated. Oren Uziel took over writing duties in 2018, and finally in 2020, Chernobyl and Last of Us TV series mastermind Craig Mazin was announced as the writer. By April 2021, Joel Taylor and Tony Rettenmeyer had rewritten Mazin's script, and then Roth did a rewrite of their rewrite. Did you get all that?
I tried to, but my brain ran out of inventory slots.
Despite all this, they attracted a cast that included Cate fucking Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, and Jamie Lee Curtis, giving the production a shot at success. Filming began in early 2021 in Hungary, vagary, with Roth promising a film that would balance the chaotic humor of the games with a compelling narrative. But production was not without its hiccups. Reports of extensive reshoots emerged, with Deadpool director Tim Miller stepping in to oversee them, leading to speculation of creative conflicts behind the scenes.
Oh, that explains why Cate Blanchett keeps breaking the fourth wall.
Fans were also concerned about the film's apparent deviation from the source material, with early set photos and teaser details suggesting significant changes to the characters and storyline. It didn't help matters that Mazin formally removed his name from the project in June of 2023, replaced by Joe Crombie, who may or may not be a real person that exists and is probably just a pseudonym for Mazin.
You better keep my name out of your damn credits.
After years of anticipation, Borderlands was finally released on August 30th, 2024. Unfortunately, the film landed with a resounding thud. Despite the high-profile talent involved, Borderlands was panned by critics. Rotten Tomatoes initially clocked the movie at 0%, a score so dismal it became a headline in and of itself, though it eventually crept up to a much more respectable 3%.
Doesn't Rotten Tomatoes have a mercy rule?
Critics lambasted the film's inconsistent tone, lack of coherence, and failure to capture the spirit of the games. Even the performances of A-listers like Blanchett and Curtis could not salvage what many deemed a fundamentally misguided adaptation. Audience reactions were slightly less brutal, with a cinema score of D+ and a 46% post-track score, but those numbers still painted a grim picture. Commercially, the film was a disaster. Produced on a budget of $110 to $120 million, it opened to just $8.6 million domestically, landing fourth in its debut weekend. Its global gross stalled at $33 million, making it one of the year's biggest financial flops. The film's dismal performance prompted a rapid pull from theaters, with daily earnings dropping below $50,000 by its third week, a rarity for a release this high profile.
Oh cool, it dropped a rare item.
The Borderlands movie now serves as a stark reminder of the challenges in adapting video games for the big screen. Despite its pedigree and potential, the film faltered due to production woes, creative missteps, and a failure to connect with its intended audience. What was meant to be a chaotic, colorful romp through Pandora ended up as a cautionary tale for Hollywood and a bitter disappointment for fans of the franchise.
Man, you went through and described just how poorly it did, both at the box office and with audiences and Rotten Tomatoes score. And I started to actually feel bad for it. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not that bad, is it? Like, I ended up not liking this movie, but I don't think I disliked it as much as everyone else now that I heard how everyone reacted to it.
If it makes you feel better, it has now risen to 10% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, okay.
So it's practically a shoo-in for the Oscars. I mean, it's not like they dumped it, though. You know, August 30th is a pretty high-profile slot. You got people trying to cram in one last summer blockbuster before they go back to school. It's PG-13, should attract that kid audience, teenage audience. I don't recall a sizable marketing push for this movie, though. I didn't see many trailers or posters or billboards up anywhere, really.
Okay.
I think they might have cut their losses a little early and given up on it.
It does sound like it was known during production, just that whole crazy story. I mean, Mazin should be capable of writing something really good. I wasn't even thinking of him when I mentioned The Last of Us earlier. That is an incredible piece of drama on its own. Forget the fact that it's adapted from a game. And obviously there's less narrative material to work with in Borderlands, but the guy can write. So
yeah, The Last of Us is almost, not to say it's an easy thing to adapt, but it's very much got a cinematic vibe to it. So if you just follow the beats of the story laid out in the game and mirror that, you could be okay. But I don't want to give Mazin too many flowers because I looked into some other stuff he wrote, like Scary Movie 3, Scary Movie 4, Superhero Movie. Yes, one of those terrible fucking... Oh, he directed that too. He directed Superhero Movie.
Wow.
It wasn't good. The Hangover Part 2.
Okay.
And worse yet, The Hangover Part 3. Identity Thief starring Melissa McCarthy and Jason Bateman.
Okay.
And The Huntsman Winter's War, which I don't think was like terrible. I never saw it. I think it was considered okay. But every movie I just listed is considered bad to worse. So he's got more misses than hits in his career. It seems like he's just hit his stride with the TV work he's been doing lately.
Either he's super inconsistent or he just had to crawl his way up through the sewers of Hollywood to finally get to where he could write the good stuff.
I mean, he directed one of those, though. What's his excuse there?
I don't know. You got to work. But Chernobyl is entirely on a different plane of existence in Hollywood than the scary movies.
Or Borderlands.
Or Borderlands.
Yeah, Chernobyl's 6 hours long. I would watch it 3 times before I'd watch Borderlands again. I really like the Chernobyl show, but it's very grim, befitting the subject matter.
That's highbrow. And whatever happened after he was taken off the script and various other people did rewrites, they brought it down. It's like on my first watch of this, I was like, this is kids stuff. They were like, You're making a kids movie with Cate Blanchett and all kinds of other nonsensical choices. But then it's not. Like, it still tries to be edgy at parts. I guess it's PG-13, so it has a little bit of cursing in it, but it has some stuff where you feel like they're holding back. But what sucks is when you make a movie and you're like, oh, let's make it kid-friendly. funny. And the choice that you make is, let's make the plot points unjustified. Because kids shows, you can just be like, oh, some weird strangers meet and they go, let's team up and we'll form a super team and fight a bad guy. Like, oh, we don't need a reason. The characters don't need to resemble people. It's just, oh, we're together. Now we're a team kind of stuff. This movie has some of that kiddie style reality that it operates in, which is not doing it any favors.
Yeah, it has a problem I brought up a few times with Joker, Folie à Deux, about side characters in that movie, where I said, I can't imagine them existing when they're not on screen. I can't imagine them having lives that extend beyond what we see. But like this movie has that problem with its main characters, which is like an even bigger issue.
It's super thin.
They don't feel real. None of these people are fleshed out in any meaningful way.
What they ended up with, I don't know what they started with in that script, but what they ended up with is super generic. It's just cookie cutter, contemporary sci-fi action movie stuff. One of the biggest examples that kept coming to mind because of the look and because of the way that the team looks is Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Where you have like a ragtag team. They all look different. They're implausibly working together against intergalactic crime syndicates and that kind of thing. And I think that's what this movie was hoping for, but it just absolutely flopped in trying any of that. And largely because the Guardians characters, we love them all. They all have personalities and we get excited for how those characters bounce off each other because of their differences and because we understand their characters real well. And these are all just cutouts. And so we don't even care, but they hardly bounce off each other. They hardly have any personality. There's no life in that team.
Yeah. And because of that, when there's supposed to be some kind of internal conflict within the team, it just doesn't hit. It doesn't resonate at all. We're not bought in.
No.
And we also don't understand the characters well enough to know why they're taking the stances they are, why they're digging their heels in on certain things. We don't know. And the movie doesn't do a good job of making us care either.
No, they're hardly anything. There's just little sketches of characters. And it feels insulting as the audience to go, oh, you thought you would just draw the outline of a character and I would bring the meaning to it and start caring for your person? Like, no, I don't care about any of these people because you didn't offer me anything.
Do you want to start walking through the story as thin as it is so we can get into some of our specific gripes and qualms?
Yeah, let's go through this thing. I feel like the danger for us in a movie like this that we dislike, but also like it's just not much to it.
Don't give a shit about.
Yeah, is that we harp on it, but it all sounds thin and we sound bitter because the movie's just like, there's not much there. So let's, in that spirit, let's try to move forward.
Let's get to it.
Okay, here we go. Lilith, played by Cate Blanchett, is a ruthless interplanetary bounty hunter. One day, she's hired by a powerful megacorporate boss named Atlas, played by Edgar Ramirez, to track down his daughter, Tiny Tina, played by Ariana Greenblatt. Tina was last seen in the company of a rogue warrior named Roland, played by Kevin Hart, and a psycho named Krieg, played by Florian Munteanu. Now, to find Tina, Lilith must return to the planet of her birth, Pandora, a world dominated by bandits who scour its desolate wastelands in search of a legendary vault, rumored to be filled with technological treasures. When she arrives on Pandora, Lilith is met by a robot named Claptrap, played by Jack Black, who says he was programmed to help her, and he insists on tagging along. Soon, Lilith finds Tina, but it turns out that Tina doesn't want to be rescued and taken back to her dad. So Lilith clashes with Tina and her buddies Roland and Krieg until they're all attacked by the Crimson Lance, which is Atlas's personal army, who have also been sent to recapture the girl. Faced with a common enemy, our 5 heroes decide to team up and escape the Crimson Lance together. And the reason for all this hubbub is that Tina is born of Iridian blood, and her father believes she's the answer to an ancient prophecy that says a daughter of Iridia holds the key to opening the legendary vault. So our heroes vow to evade the forces of Atlas and find and open the vault themselves. I guess they vow. They just do it. They just kind of move
They just kind of
forward.
like, yeah, all right, here we go.
They're like, oh, get in the truck. Are we a team? Yeah, now we're a team because we got in the truck. And I guess they still have some like, should I trust you? Now Atlas is after us all, so we're on a team. Just like some nods to that, but it's pretty weak.
Now, you keep calling him Atlas, but I want to point out that his full name is Deucalion Atlas. His parents were real fans of Greek mythology because Deucalion, that's the son of Prometheus, and then Atlas was a titan of some sort. Not a god, but like a demigod, maybe.
Is Atlas the one who's holding up the world?
Yes.
I know
Yeah,
that much.
that is
Okay.
him.
I didn't know the Deucalion part. That's a good pull for you from your mythological Rolodex there.
Thank you. Played by Edgar Ramirez in a most regrettable performance.
It's not a good performance.
It's an actor I like quite a bit, but he's almost embarrassingly bad in this movie.
And it's funny because he's not literally there in the world of the movie. He's like a hologram or a projection or something. And almost every time he's on screen, but he also acts it as though the actor is not there and also can't hear the dialogue of his scene partners. So it breaks down in such a way that like, what's going on? Couldn't they do a scene like normal actors? It just falls apart when he's on screen.
It's like he's on a phone call that we can only hear his end of. And the rest of the cast is actually acting out the scenes.
And he can only hear his stuff. It's like, oh, you're breaking up. I'm just going to say my next line. I don't know what you said, but.
And I don't know how or why he would have filmed his scene separate from the rest of the cast. Like, I have nothing to back that up.
No.
But like, he's not matching their tone at all or like their cadence. It's just a very inorganic performance.
All of it. The timing, the cadence, the tone, nothing matches. It sticks out as weird in a movie that is overall weird. Should we talk about how it starts?
Yeah. Now, did you take this as a intentional reference? Because I think I did as well.
I noticed a couple references at the top that I thought were pretty intentional.
In the year 2024, the year of our Lord, you can't just have Cate Blanchett open a movie with a voiceover without me thinking of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, immediately comes to mind. Even though she is speaking in her American accent and it's quite a different character, it's still Cate Blanchett telling you the history of a planet. And you're like, oh, it was better when Galadriel did it.
Yeah, she's much less eloquent. Lilith, she wraps it all up with, sounds like a lot of wacko BS, huh? Which is just, yeah, it sure does, Cate.
Cate just does not work as a jaded bounty hunter.
It's also not a great American. The accent slips occasionally.
Yeah.
And I know she's capable of it, but she probably just, I think I read an interview with her where she said she was like going crazy because of COVID and being locked in the house. And she was gardening a lot. And her husband was like, you're getting a little too comfortable with the chainsaw. I think you need to go do a job. So she did Borderlands.
And that's why she took this movie, just to not...
Can't be in my house anymore.
I'm not sure which is worse, this movie or Cabin Fever. It's a toss-up.
Oh, Ian, that was an Eli Roth reference.
Oh my, that was accidental.
That was his first movie.
No, I was referring to Kate's actual case of cabin fever where she was going nuts, but
man, I was trying to give you credit for that. But
I know, it makes me sound like a genuine movie buff.
Cabin Fever is a good movie.
Probably better than this.
Yeah, Eli Roth is not. I just big up Thanksgiving on the pod, I think.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
You were into that one, I know.
I rewatched it on Thanksgiving with my sister. It's fun.
No sooner do they finish one tribute to a much better movie than they bust out another tribute, which might be to two different movies.
Yeah.
What do you think was happening with the scene where we meet Kevin Hart in a ill-fitting space trooper helmet?
He literally does a dark helmet joke. That's like verbatim.
Yeah.
When he's like, I can't breathe with this thing on. That's like Rick Moranis literally said that in Spaceballs, which we covered not 3 months ago.
It's pretty much the same joke. And also at the same time, it's another Star Wars reference in that there's a princess in white in a jail cell and a space trooper breaks in and she goes, aren't you a little short to be a space trooper? Although she doesn't say that exactly, but his height is referenced, the ill-fitting helmet. It's very much Luke freeing Leia from her cell on the Death Star.
I didn't even think of the aren't you a little short to be a stormtrooper line. Because she says to Kevin Hart, my dad sent you his shortest soldier.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, to rescue his least funny daughter. Star Wars, it is not. But that wasn't like, I didn't actually mind that exchange.
No.
I was still like trying to give the movie the benefit of the doubt at that point. But then he also beats up one of the actual security guards and says something like fake ass stormtrooper ass bitch.
Oh, does he?
To him like under his breath, which I think the Kevin Hart casting is one of the things I was referencing in the monologue that had fans confused and concerned, because the character of Roland is, again, not a creation for the movie. He exists in the game as the very straight-laced, buttoned-up soldier character. He's like the dude who's just like tactical and very by the book. And Kevin Hart plays him like that, but that begs the question, why cast Kevin Hart then?
Yeah.
You know, like, what are we doing?
It's all watered down because he's half buttoned up soldier, but they write him a bunch of Kevin Hart wisecracks, which obviously you've got to do if you're casting Kevin Hart, but it kind of clashes. It leaves both those characterizations half-baked.
I'm struggled to think of like, I think he has some funny lines, but I don't think any of them were meant to be funny by the character, if that makes sense.
Yeah, he's not cracking wise. He's just getting frustrated and yelling something that happens to be funny.
Like, it's funny because of the circumstances and either like he's playing the straight man or like it's just not what you would expect from Kevin Hart. And that's fine. Like, I'm fine with actors leaving their comfort zones for roles, but like anyone could have played that role.
Yeah, except for like that little quip when they banter in the beginning. That's where he's being quippy. That's the character being quippy for a second and zinging the girl with a comeback. But other than that, yeah, it's weird. And you mentioned he makes another joke under his breath. My problem that I wanted to rant about with that whole intro scene is that they decided to make under your breath the method by which they introduce the key relationships in the movie. Like,
hold on, I'm getting a call. ADR Patrol, is that you? We need you on the case.
ADR Patrol.
He's like beating the guy and you see him from the back. He's like punching the guy and he says, fake stormtrooper ass bitch, with his back to the camera. Like, there's no way that was a line that they filmed on set.
Oh, you're right. And then they introduced the relationship between Krieg and Tina, moments later. There's this big chaotic battle and then everyone's lying on the floor. And then they go, oh, wait, these are our main characters. We need to make them a tightly bonded team for the rest of the movie. So let's make them mumble some things under their breath via ADR while they're in the distance and you can't see whether their mouth is moving. So in that situation, situation, Tina mumbles, and she's pretty much unconscious. She goes, "Hey, Krieg, what's up, my dude?" And then he's like, my girl. And okay, now we've established after the fact, after the whole scene is over, that they're best friends. And when I say we've established, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, that's all the work they've done.
And the same with Roland and Tina. Like, he starts off by lying to her, saying, your father sent me, and her sort of sarcastic, oh, really? Was supposed to establish that, no, her father didn't send her. He's actually a noble hero who's rescuing her to prevent her father from abusing her, and together they're going to do the right thing. But none of that is spoken. It doesn't make any sense when I try to explain it like that. But that's what the movie thinks it's doing in that scene, because they're pretty much cemented as buddies after that, despite nothing on screen that really would make sense.
They give them the benefit of a time jump, too, from this scene to the next time we see them together.
That's true.
So you can just imagine all the off-screen bonding that went on that made them so tightly knit.
You better bring a good imagination to this movie if you're going to want to make it make sense.
But then you bring up Krieg, and he's got a mask on, so we have no proof that they even wrote lines for him.
That's true.
You know, like they could have just wrote his character in post.
He's on the wall there. He's ADR Patrol's most wanted, because him and Claptrap could literally said anything on set, and then they just started with blank slate when they went into post.
Krieg's one-line, like they try to make him have the typical meathead one-liners, but they don't even make sense. He goes to a member of the Crimson Lance, which is this kind of mercenary group that Kevin Hart used to be a member of, and he like grabs him by the neck and says, "You're in my spot," and throws him. It's like, what spot are you talking? Like, you guys are in a hallway. That's what you say to somebody like in a parking lot. What are you talking about, man? That doesn't even make sense.
I spent some time trying to make sense of what Krieg was doing with those one-liners, because they're all random, and part of it's just, oh, he's so quirky, you know, he's got a bag of Doritos on his head, like, he's so crazy.
Oh, you were doing the
She's so crazy meme?
Is it Robin was her name?
I don't even know who that was, but there's a meme about...
Yeah, the girl in the grocery store with the bag of Doritos on her head.
She's so crazy. And that's kind of what Krieg is, because he's a big brawler, but he says these random things that don't make sense and people chuckle. But to me, that only makes sense. Like, I had to assume that's a video game thing where there's like NPCs have 6 or 8 things that they say and they just repeat and they don't necessarily match the situation. I don't know. I didn't get it. And the closest they get to taking us inside the Krieg character to seeing what he's really about is in the final battle. 1/4 of his mask cracks off and we see his actual human eye, and that's supposed to humanize him. Now he's a real person because we've seen one of his eyeballs behind the mask. And like, other than that, he's just a dumb thing that goes around saying dumb things.
He also might be invincible. Like, I'm pretty sure he gets shot close range in one of the early action scenes and he's fine.
Yeah, they didn't explain that. Lilith keeps shooting him with guns in the face and the chest and nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Speaking of Lilith, so our real intro to her is this scene in a bar, our non-voiceover introduction to Lilith, where she's got a bounty that she's collecting. So she's lugging this guy around with a bag on his head, and she knows all the bartenders and stuff. So we know she's cool and she likes to drink. And
it's so cliche. It's so just rote. There's no life in it.
Han Solo, she is not. But this guy walks up to her fairly politely and is like, my boss would like to hire you. He does almost shoot her bounty there, her prisoner.
Oh yeah, one of his guys, the level of threat is that they're like, hey, I want to talk to you. And she punches him in the face. He's like, oh God, why'd you do that? I just want to offer you a job. She's like, I'm busy. So one of their guys is like, your bounty's good, dead or alive. So one of the henchmen pulls out a gun. Oh, we're going to kill your bounty so that you'll talk to us. That's as much as she's provoked, right?
And then she shoots all of them. She fires like 4 shots too. I couldn't make out where she shot each guy because there's only 2 of them.
I think she double tapped one of the guys in the head. Like, she responds to this mild provocation while she's trying to have a drink and relax by just killing these humans. These aren't like, it's not a laser gun.
They're not robots. Yeah.
These are not robots or weird alien creatures. They're people. She turns around and executes them, leaves the one guy standing, but kills both henchmen. And that was their attempt to liven up. Like, oh, this is an ordinary scene where she's bantering with her friend, the bartender, about bounty hunter, not for old people, or whatever routine dialogue. And they're like, let's liven it up. Let's have her just start killing people wantonly. Like, that's going to show that she's edgy.
And she's killing people that we come to understand later work for an evil man. But at the time, we don't know what their deal is.
Yeah.
You can maybe surmise that they're like somewhat unsavory, but certainly not enough to warrant just murdering them in cold blood.
Yeah.
Not to mention that bartender's supposedly her friend. Think about all the tips she's missing out on now because they had to close the bar for the night.
I know. The bartender's the first one to pull out her shotgun and go, hey, no shooting in the bar. She says that to the henchman, but she doesn't object when her friend starts killing everybody. It's kind of juvenile thinking that this is going to make her cool. And like you're saying, the logic doesn't even add up. They are obviously the henchmen of someone who would hire a bounty hunter, but she's the freaking bounty hunter. She's not exactly like allergic to...
Right. She can't take a moral stance on bounty hunting. How dare you hire a bounty hunter?
I'll kill you for that. They're like, oh, wait, I'm the bounty hunter. And then she does the Han Solo thing where she's like, I don't want to work for you. I don't do this kind of stupid shit. And then he's like, well, what about this much money? And she's, oh, I guess I do.
I don't want to skip over the fact that for the henchmen they leave alive, we get several fat jokes at his expense, which felt weirdly mean-spirited.
Yeah.
I thought in 2024 we were past that. I don't think Lilith makes any. I think they all come from Atlas, his hologram face. But like, it felt like Valentine, where like, this guy's maybe like a little overweight, but they're just like, hey, fat boy, nonstop. But it was just weirdly mean-spirited. And then they also stole from the creator this whole thing where you can put your face on any dead body and make it talk. In that movie, it was done more deftly and a little more, I don't want to say realistically, but they tried to explain it.
Yeah, the creator was creepy because they actually brought the guy back to life. It wasn't so much that they projected something on his face. It was like they brought his brain back to life for a minute, and he was like, "Oh, I'm not dead."
But I think they put it in a different body, so he was confused for a second.
I think you're right.
About like, why am I in this body?
He was confused. It's like, call my wife, and they're like, "Shut up. We're just here to ask you about what you saw right before you died." So that was really dark. This was not dark. This was played for laughs. This was like the big bad guy has a holographic necklace, so he can show up in places by just projecting his face over someone else's face, which I get. I'm into photoshopping faces onto other faces, so
You don't say.
That was fun.
That technology would make your job a lot easier.
Yeah. What do you call these people? Iridians?
We talked a little bit of Blanchett already, but to stress, like, she's doing the typical Luke, Neo, fulfill a prophecy, hero's journey thing, which like Luke was a teenager. Keanu Reeves was in like his early 30s, I think, when The Matrix came out. But I think the character was supposed to be like late 20s.
Yeah.
And like some other stuff that happens later in the movie makes it feel even worse that they've just assigned this storyline to Cate Blanchett.
And she looks fine, but I guess another thing that they took from the video games is her super bright colors. She's got this super bright orange red hair, and her clothes are all cartoonishly bright colors, which again sort of clashes with what a woman in her 50s would look like and wear. The whole mix feels incongruous, and there's no reason why Cate Blanchett couldn't play an action hero, but she just doesn't pull it off physically, and whether that's her fault or the way the movie was shot. She's doing all this fighting where she's rolling over things and flipping and jumping and landing and crashing and shooting, and the cuts between her and the stunt double are just the really obvious clunky kind. So you're like, oh, she's not doing any of her own stunts. It's just constantly a stunt double flipping and then cut to her on the ground, picking up her head, looking at the camera. And they just did them in this kind of cheesiest way where it underscored the fact that this is an older lady and they didn't bother to put her through martial arts camp. They're just like, no, we're going to do it with stunt doubles. Don't worry about it, Cate.
Yeah, that's not a knock on Cate Blanchett's ability to play an action hero. She played Hela in Thor Ragnarok. She was great in that.
Yeah.
That was a character who kicked a decent amount of ass. And we'll see her in Black Bags, the Steven Soderbergh spy thriller, where she seems to be a highly trained killer of some sort. So I'm sure Soderbergh always has good female-led action in his movies. If you've ever seen Haywire, especially, I'm excited to see her in that. I don't think she's incapable of it. I just think it's not the right character. It's not the fact that it's an action hero. It's just
it just wasn't done well. It's not a well-written character, and they didn't really care that much. The action scenes they're not all CGI, but they just feel artificial. They don't feel real. There's no stakes, and because you don't care about the characters, there's very little interest in them, so they start boring you really fast.
Now for the elephant, or should I say rolling android in the room. We got to talk about Jack Black as Claptrap, and I said that in that cadence so we'd see that they have a double rhyme. This was by far the most derided part of the movie. In any review I read, people fucking hated this character, and they hated Jack Black as him, but I found him mostly okay.
Yeah, like a little better than you think he's going to be. Like, I didn't know the audience reaction, but the character itself is written as annoying, right?
Yeah.
Cate Blanchett's character is burned out and jaded and doesn't want to talk to people. And Claptrap is a super chatty robot that's in her face. And so he's supposed to be annoying. He keeps talking. He keeps rambling and making jokes nonstop. Plus the other thing going against Claptrap is the Jack Black backlash, which is a hard phrase to say.
The Jack Black Claptrap backlash?
He did an evil villain turn. He's in his villain era, and we're not sure whether we like Jack Black at all now. And with all that baggage,
I think him and Kyle have reunited and patched up things.
Oh, okay. I'm glad to hear that. But I didn't know that going into this. So I was carrying so much Jack Black baggage, and yet it's kind of funny. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I was particularly dreading this performance because I've seen that fucking Minecraft trailer so many times, and he seems like he's going to be a real annoying dude in that movie. But I feel like Claptrap is maybe the one character that they nailed from a game to screen sense. Like, that's Claptrap. They nailed it. He's annoying, and he talks a lot. But they also take him off screen for chunks. I think they're aware that it can be a little much. So I didn't have a big issue with it. There are scenes where I was like, all right, that's enough. Like when he's like pooping out bullets, I was like, I don't need more of this. But yeah, overall, I was surprised at how well I tolerated him.
And so like this character, for anyone who hasn't seen him, literally has no mouth. I guess just like Krieg, they could write any lines they wanted and keep trying new ones. And this is a movie that, as you documented.
Are you calling him in?
Yeah, should we call out the patrol?
All right. Yeah, ADR patrol. Here we come.
ADR patrol.
Yeah, they need to make some arrests here. But actually, I think the ADR that was done here served the public good. It felt like a movie that brought some writers back, did some punch up late, and went back and re-recorded Jack Black to get the funniest zinger to end each scene or end each interaction. And I'm like, oh, I sense that they did it because the rhythm and the way that those lines are stapled on feels artificial. But I'm like, I'm glad they spent an extra 15 minutes in the writer's room, tried to beat the joke they had. They did beat it, and they recorded a joke that was actually funny. So I'm like, thank you. Thank you for doing a funny joke.
Yeah, I think the practice of punch up is super popular in animated films for obvious reasons because there's no barrier to it. You can add in whatever you want. And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with it, but they have to be worth it. And I think by and large, Claptrap's lines were mostly worth it.
Yeah, he gets some of those Patton Oswalt style. You always tell that Patton Oswalt story of him.
I fell on my bottom into some butterscotch.
Recording lines that gets injected from off screen. And there's a few that happen in this movie that Claptrap's voice just yells from off screen, one more joke to end a scene. And so, yeah, it feels constructed, but they're not half bad. And they didn't feel like Jack Black brought too much of himself to it. Like he was doing a character and he committed to the Claptrap character. So it sounds more like Claptrap to me than it sounds like Jack Black hamming it up in a movie.
So you didn't sense any Jack Black Claptrap backlash?
I'm not going to even try to repeat that line back to you, but no, I didn't feel the backlash. I was relatively okay with him. And maybe because there was so much else to distract you in this movie that's just not working. The Claptrap actually works decently well. You can be grateful for that.
I think you landed on something that I hadn't quite figured out yet, which is that it does feel like not standard Jack Black stuff. I think we've had maybe more than 40 years of standard Jack Black stuff now. And so anytime I can get, 30, I think like mid 90s probably is when we started seeing him everywhere. So when I can get some Jack Black that's a little different than the usual flavor, I'm grateful for it.
It's subtle, right? But somehow I was like, oh, he just did a line reading though. That wasn't just a Jack Black thing. I felt like his tone and his readings were pretty specific to the character, which is pretty weird to be crediting the character development of this stupid, annoying joke robot in this cheesy movie where there's almost no character depth to anybody, but kudos to Jack.
So we're giving Jack credit for talking like a robot. Yeah. Let's get into Act 2 where there's a character who talks like a robot and is terrible at it, and I hate it so much.
Interesting observation. Let's hear all about that.
All right. While searching for the vault and evading the soldiers of the Crimson Lance, Lilith and her new teammates seek help from an archaeologist named Dr. Patricia Tanis, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, who also happens to be Lilith's estranged foster mother. Tanis leads them to a cavern containing an artifact that is one of the missing keys to the vault. The cave is guarded by a legion of psycho bandits, so the team has to sneak their way in and then fight their way out. But they manage to retrieve the key. But during the fight, they get separated from Roland, who heroically stays behind to fight while the others escape. After everything she's seen, Lilith decides she's on Tina's side and won't turn her over for the bounty, so she destroys the signaling device that Atlas gave her. But Atlas contacts Lilith anyway, and when Tina overhears, she misunderstands and thinks Lilith is against her, so she throws one of her signature bombs at Lilith and parts ways. By the way, how they find the key is one of the funniest bits of this movie. She literally just goes, I found the key.
Yeah, and then they spin that as, oh, that was a secret clue that she was the chosen one, but it's also a way to get out of a nasty little plot development where they just told you that the key is hidden and impossible to find.
Yeah, we're seeing it's this huge warehouse full of crates, which I thought it was a funny nod to a video game that you have to search a bunch of crates to find the quest item. But then they're like gearing up and Claptrap's like, it will take us 11 days. Blah, blah, blah. Then she's like, oh, I found it. It's like, oh, that was expedient.
But because that Lilith character is cold and simplistic, I get that that's a punchline. Like the movie didn't do that by accident. They set it up as a punchline, but the punchline was just the relief for us as the audience that like, okay, we're done. Let's get out of this scene and move on.
Yeah. So if you couldn't tell from my intro to Act 2, the character I'm talking about is Jamie Lee Curtis as Dr. Tanis. I really dislike this character and this performance. And as I grow as a person and get older, I think I have to come to terms with the fact that I just don't like Jamie Lee Curtis as an actor.
Oh, really?
I think that's just something I have to grapple with personally. Nothing against her as a person, as far as I know. I don't know much about her, but don't enjoy her in movies. And I hate this character and this performance.
It's kind of annoying. And I know what you're saying about Jamie Lee Curtis. She has a weird corniness about her. And I feel like it's worked for her in certain things. I'm thinking of True Lies.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of Everything Everywhere All at Once, where her annoyingness was the point of that character, right? And so that worked to her advantage. Here, she is playing, and you had to point this out to me, that this character, theoretically, although they don't say it, is autistic.
Jamie Lee Curtis has said it in interviews about the movie. They don't say it in the movie, but she said, oh yeah, her character is autistic. So her whole way of showing that to the audience is to talk like a robot.
It's clunky. It's a little bit derivative of Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man.
Or the Good Doctor from The Good Doctor.
Never watched that, but I've seen some of the memes.
I am a surgeon.
And a movie that's thin on its characterization. Hers is yet another one. But I get where, like, it feels ickier to do that, portray neurodiversity on screen in just a kind of a clunky way that's played for laughs. And I'm not sure what the point of it is. I don't know. Maybe.
But did it get any laughs? Did you find anything she did or said funny?
No, not really. I just tolerated it. And you're like, is that representation? Is that doing something positive for a community? Or is it just a half-assed thing they threw in there? Maybe the latter.
I certainly don't see it as. But you know what? Maybe they could liven this movie up, inject some laughs into it if they hired some professional stand-up comedians / podcasters. And who's that? It's Bobby Lee playing a member of the Crimson Lance.
That's a choice.
I'm sure he won't make this movie more annoying.
I got to say, in life, I'm pretty much annoyed with Bobby Lee. I've probably had my fill.
Yeah.
And also when he's himself, he's a handful. And the way he lives his life and his opinions are tough to swallow. Here, he's playing a pretty simplistic character. And somehow, just because he brings a lot of comic energy, I minded him less in this movie than I do in real life.
Interesting. I was half expecting to be like, Bobby's a close personal friend. I would not want to disparage him. I think he lives like in your neighborhood.
Probably.
Yeah.
He's in a little throwaway role here. He's a soldier who's an old roommate of Roland's. And so he plays this role in this subplot about as they're trying to sneak around town, Roland gets seen by him. And then that whole plot is just time wasting to me. Like they're running in circles around each other. The Red Faction Army, whatever they call them, Crimson Lance and the heroes.
The Crimson Lance, led by Knox. And I think part of Bobby Lee's role there is to more heavily allude to the romantic history between Knox and Roland.
Which I did not pick up on until the second watch at the very end.
Yeah, it's there, but it's thin, like everything else in this movie. Yeah, I just thought it'd be nice to bring up Bobby Lee and talk some shit about him, but you wouldn't even indulge me in that.
Sorry, I'm too kind.
This movie's taking everything from me.
But now that you said that, the romance, the deep relationship between Roland and Knox, captain of the Crimson Lance, that's also established in that opening scene that I was trying to rant about in my half-hearted way. She's unconscious on the floor, and Roland stumbles over to her and mumbles, sorry.
He actually says, damn, sorry, Knox.
That's the first scene that establishes the deep relationship between Roland and Knox when he touches her face as she's unconscious on the floor. Like, dude, you gotta do more character work than that. And yet it's that moment where he's like, sorry. And then it's Bobby Lee going, hey, you and Knox were friends, right?
You ghosted her. Yeah.
And then at the end, someone else goes, I feel like those two have a history. And then she suddenly tries to protect him. And
one way to let the audience know your characters have a history is to have a third unrelated character go, you guys have a history, don't you? I just like that her name's just Knox. No first name, no last name, just like Prince.
That would be fun if she was more of an iconic character like Prince. But alas, she's just playing a little role.
Yeah, she doesn't get a ton to do. They fall for the oldest trick in the book, the fucking sneaking out in a dumpster.
Yeah, that happens so fast. I couldn't believe it really happened. Like, they didn't set it up. It's such an old trick. It's such a cliche plot point. They're like, we're not even going to bother to show you that much of it. We're just going to show 2 seconds of them in a dumpster and go, they snuck out.
And they this hyper-vigilant military group that's locked down the street, search every inch. Oh, hold on, get out of the way for this big dumpster.
Let these big empty boxes leave town. Don't get in their way. It's dumb. So much dumb stuff. The movie actually washed over me in a more innocuous way on the first watch, and the second watch, the more these things hit me.
Because you were in good company.
I was. We were hanging out. Our glow reflected.
I think we might have had some beers.
There was a lot of positive aura in that room as we watched a movie together for the first time. But yeah, all that wore off on my second watch at home, and I'm like, this movie is trying my fucking patience.
But then we get arguably the best scene in the movie for me, which is the cave fight.
And not because of the cave fighting action.
No, it's just one of the greatest songs ever written. Ace of Spades by Motorhead is playing. And yeah, my band used to cover Ace of Spades, and that was my showcase. I was the bass player, and I sang lead vocals on it.
Oh, that is so cool. That is a cool John tidbit.
Tidbit.
Well, tidbit. I know we usually get the Ian tidbits. There's a John one. I bet you I could not sing and play the bass today if I tried. That's like a whole other skill set you have to learn to do both at the same time.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Lemmy's playing chords on that for a lot of it.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
He always played a lot of power chords on the bass.
Okay. That's like the only Motorhead song I know. But I was like, hey, it's Lemmy when that came on. And all of a sudden the movie had some life. Because as we mentioned before, the action scenes, there's several big set pieces and they all just bore the shit out of you because you don't care. Like, yeah, they're jumping around, they're flipping over each other, shooting people. And it's like, I guess they have to do this to get to the next room on this quest. But like,
it's a dungeon crawler, yeah. But like also none of our main characters ever get hurt or killed. And we don't care about any of they're literally nameless, faceless villains in this scene.
Yeah.
They're all wearing masks that look just like Krieg's. So they're pretty inconsequential.
Yeah, there's no stakes on either side. It's like, so what? Yes, we know you can't get out of this scene unless you blast everyone on the screen, but that's your job. It's not my job to watch you. Just get it done and get me out of here.
What else from this section? Oh, the big Lilith and Atlas hologram showdown where she basically tells him she's not going to hand over Tina, but Tina somehow misinterprets that to think she is going to hand her over.
Yeah, it's just everything about that scene. When that scene ended the first time, I'm like, that was the worst dialogue I've ever seen. And I may tone that position down. It was some of the worst dialogue I've ever seen. It was, we already described that phenomenon where Atlas, what's his name? Edgar Ramirez, is that his name?
Yeah.
He's just so out of sync. And yes, he's another hologram talking to Lilith through a device, but he's pausing in the middle of a sentence. It's like his line. He's not waiting for a reaction. He's not even in sync with himself. He stops in the middle of a sentence for no reason and then continues the sentence 2 seconds later. It's like, why did you say that? That didn't add meaning. That just made it impossible to understand what the hell you're saying.
You know what? I'm not even mad at him. He's trying some stuff. He's trying to liven it up.
Or he pissed off the editor and the editor just fucked with him. And I'm going to ruin your fucking scenes, dude. I'm just chopping the hell out of your dialogue. No one's going to sound like they can hear each other. It's bad. Yeah. And then, like you said, the misunderstanding, it's one of those sitcom style misunderstandings where Tina's listening to the end of the conversation and she hears her dad thank Lilith. And she's like, oh no, Lilith's on his side. And it's like, come on, give us some better reasoning to split our main characters from each other.
It is like a sitcom misunderstanding if one of the sitcom characters was obsessed with throwing bombs.
Yeah.
Because anytime somebody bothers her even a little bit, Tina just throws a bomb at them.
She's got her cute gimmick, little stuffed rabbits with bombs in them.
She's got a lot of them.
It's a character that you can feel it's pulled from the video game and that has its backstory and its lore, but the rabbits aren't explained.
Yeah, and I didn't think Ariana Greenblatt was bad necessarily. Like, I think her performance was okay.
It was fine.
But like you said, it's just they were hoping, I guess, the video games would do a lot of the heavy lifting here. But also, like, the first game came out 15 years ago. The most recent mainline game came out 5 years ago. Yeah, 2019 was Borderlands 3. And I feel like its popularity has waned every year since Borderlands 2 came out in 2012. So, like, you need to make the movie work on its own merits because the game audience is not turning out for this.
No.
Not in the numbers you need to make it work.
No, they would have been better off risking the game audience and writing a more unique original script that didn't have so much game stuff in it.
Like Silent Hill. I feel like Silent Hill was kind of the poster child for being like, we know this game doesn't have a big enough audience to be a success by just catering to them. So we're going to keep the spirit of it, but not necessarily adapt it beat by beat. And it's a pretty beloved, I think it was panned by critics upon release, but it's become kind of a cult classic in the years since.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be a really tedious episode. Thank you to the listeners who are still with us. We've got one more act to get through of this dumb little plot.
Hey, I'm being charming and entertaining as all heck.
You are. We're trying. It's not like we're not trying. It's just one of those movies that kind of brings you down. It puts you in a bad mood trying to talk about it. That's how I feel. I like to be more positive than this.
I think Ian just gets in a bad mood when he talks to me and he doesn't know how to deal with those feelings. So he's blaming it on Borderlands.
That would be so sad. This would be a tough podcast if that was true. Like the whole thing is me getting on to start recording and then going, oh, I just remembered I hate this guy. This sucks.
This movie puts me in a bad mood. What was the last movie we talked about that was like that? Maybe Cosmopolis.
Yeah.
That was just like draining to talk about.
Yeah, it felt like a slog.
If it wasn't that, it was Evan Almighty.
That one made us mad. That one was more like
Fuck that movie so much.
Actively riled up, whereas Cosmopolis was just like, this is frustrating and difficult. And this movie, watch this movie, I would say to people, it's not that bad. It's just thin. It's just light. It's just whatever kind of movie. It's just when you have to try to take it apart that you go, why are you making me spend time on this?
You are going to be longing for the days of Borderlands when you try to write a synopsis for next week's movie.
Oh my God.
It's Megalopolis.
I'm actually frightened.
Good fucking luck.
Maybe the movie that sends me over the edge. I may be in the loony bin next time you hear from me.
You already watched it once, right?
Yeah, and I'm half crazed. But
Coppola's fully crazed.
More on that next week. There will be no shortage of mental health assessments of everyone involved, including us.
All right, let's get out of this. Let's get out of the Borderlands.
Let's wrap up this movie. Armed with the keys, Tina and her friends show up at the vault. But when Tina tries to unlock the vault door, it doesn't open up for her. Unfortunately, Atlas and his Crimson Lance troops are there too, and there's a standoff. Suddenly, Lilith arrives, and she reveals that she herself is actually the daughter of Iridia that the prophecy has been waiting for. She sprouts wings of flame, amongst some other new powers, as she transforms into a being called Firehawk. Then a massive climactic battle ensues. In the midst of the fray, Atlas grabs Tina and takes her hostage, and forces Lilith to open the vault for him. But once inside, Lilith and Tina turn the tables, and they trap Atlas inside as he's caught in the tentacles of a vault monster that we never heard of or seen before or after.
It's a vault monster.
Later, our heroes celebrate a newfound peace on the planet Pandora.
I really don't like the character of Deucalion Atlas. I think he's a dorky little weirdo. And when he has his little... It's Lilith that tries to shoot him, right? Oh, no, it's Roland. When Roland makes his hero's appearance and shoots at Atlas like 400 times and nothing happens to him. But he's still standing there like, yeah, I got you. It's like, he's fine. He's right there. And then he's like, oh, you would have had me if not for my Atlas personal shields or whatever. And he like pulls back his coat to show these two little like lasers that are
devices. Yeah.
I was like, is this product placement for a fictional product? Why are we getting this kind of sales pitch?
That was weird because that's a character that Atlas could have been. He could have been the funny like huckster
shill,
like, product placement guy.
Like the MyPillow guy, but for personal defense.
For funny defense technology, but that's the only appearance of that version of Atlas. The rest of the time, he's nothing like that. He's like a blank slate. It's weird, right?
Yeah, he's just like a tech CEO guy, like a weird, entrepreneur.
No particular traits like that. So yeah, it did stand out. And it's another thing that kind of just annoys you. Like, well, why did he just do that thing that I've never seen him do before in the final scene?
I would buy one of those if they were real. So why are you advertising a product I want but can't buy?
Oh, that's why you were mad? You're like,
yeah, you've been outside in America lately? There's like an 80% chance Cybertruck's going to get blown up.
We're going to have to start searching for our own vault. It's really just some prepper's bunker and just steal all their cans of beans.
And then the character we've come to know and love, your best friend and mine, Knox, just gets immediately incinerated when she refuses to kill our lovable bunch.
Which should have been a moment. There's a lot of moments that should have been moments. Right. Like, that's kind of funny. You go, finally, this thing that's been brewing, we know all about the relationship between Knox and Roland, and it's been building throughout the movie. And finally, she does the right thing. She stands up and defends her man, and she gets immediately incinerated. It should be kind of funny, but because we didn't really get that, I didn't get that till the moment she did it. She's barely in the movie. It's like, okay, yeah, you did a thing, but it's like, again, we don't care.
Yeah, you can't subvert expectations with the 11th build character in a movie and make the movie feel like it's more freewheeling than it actually is. Like, you're still following the rules of a buddy team up kids movie pretty closely. It's just you killed a very minor ancillary character.
It's like a cheeky moment that you would see in a James Gunn thing or a well-made Marvel movie. Like a little bit of that shocking, oh, this movie's more violent. It's going there more than we thought. And so you get that's what it's trying to do, but there was like kind of no setup for that character. So
I don't know if you remember the Gunn version of Suicide Squad. I don't remember which one is the Suicide Squad and which one's just Suicide Squad. So,
right.
But like the Roland character died early on. So that's how you set the expectation that anything can happen. You don't wait till the last scene of the movie and kill a minor side character.
Yeah, it doesn't have the same zing. But I was going to say this whole act, but this whole movie really does. It's full of moments that they try to draw out some emotion, but they just whiff. And the next one is Lilith transforming, right? Yeah. This is the big payoff of the movie. You kind of suspected that she was really going to be the chosen one just because of how much Tina keeps telling you, I'm the chosen one, I'm special, I'm the chosen one. And then she's not, it's Lilith. And then her transformation, just the physical time it took for glowing lines of CGI to crawl up her body and things to happen was like, it took so long on screen that I'm like, come on.
It's like 4 minutes.
I'm not pausing to get a Kleenex because I'm crying at the surge of emotion of seeing my beloved hero. I'm like, yeah, this is just a thing. It's just another thing that's happening that we don't care too much about. So it's another swing and miss.
And it hits different when the whole movie is building up that this teenager is the chosen one to fulfill the prophecy. And then she gets like pushed off the platform at the last minute. So this boomer can come on and be like, actually, it's me. I know Cate Blanchett She's not actually a boomer. She's Gen X.
She's Gen X, like me.
Like it did feel like that whole thing about boomers pulling up the ladder on the generations behind them. No,
that's funny.
I'm the promised. Like
I don't feel like that's the intentional message, but it's
it's
funny
not.
if
But
you
like,
take that message.
It's definitely just a byproduct of them casting an actor that's so much older than the character in the game, where like these same story beats are followed, but it just adds another layer to it. Of like, aren't you like you should be like estate planning? You're going to be the Firehawk now. That's how you're going to live your golden years.
Yeah. And then they bond. They have a stupid scene at the end of like the celebration scene where when you do like an Ewok fireworks celebration scene, that was like tired when the Ewoks did it. Yeah. And they just do it in an absolutely obligatory, meaningless version of that in this. And then the two ladies are bonding, Tina and Lilith, who could literally be her grandma. And she's like, do the Firehawk thing. And it's like, there's nothing to that either. They don't really have any relationship. So why are they sharing this moment?
Yeah. And there was not even any Motorhead in the final battle. So what are we even doing here?
That was a letdown. Don't do Motorhead in the middle battle. And then, was there any interesting music in the final battle?
I think it was the Heavy, wasn't it? Didn't they play How You Like Me Now by the Heavy?
Oh, okay. It was something that I didn't recognize, so it washed over me.
Because I know the Heavy has a tie to the games. I think one of their songs opened the second game and the third game, like two different songs. But like their band I actually enjoy. You'd probably like them too. They're like big band Creole revival. I don't really know how you describe them. Kind of funk, but like a little harder edged.
I'll have to check them out.
You definitely know the song How You Like Me Now. It was, if you've seen a car commercial in the 21st century, it's one of those. But yes, that's Borderlands.
Yeah.
More like Borderlands. Oh, I said that already.
Yeah. I've never been Border and nothing in the movie lands. So it's a perfect name.
Oh, Ian, been sitting on that one the whole time.
The whole time. 90 minutes, man. We're hopefully edited it down to less than that. Or there's
you fucking better have. We're not going to have an audience.
No one's going to be hearing this at all at this point. Let's see what the cast and crew did after this. Maybe something more interesting than this movie.
Yeah, we'll start with Roth. So started his career with Cabin Fever, Hostels 1 and 2 and The Green Inferno. And then he did the erotic Keanu Reeves thriller with Anna de Armas, Knock Knock.
Oh, I've not seen that.
Good little movie.
Really?
Yeah, it's not bad. And then he made a remake of the revenge porn classic Death Wish. And then he made a hard turn into family-friendly fantasy in 2018 with The House with a Clock in Its Walls. And that starred Blanchett, so that's how they came to know each other.
Interesting. Okay.
And then he'd follow that up with the 2021 documentary Finn, which is about plummeting shark populations around the world. And he personally went out and filmed a bunch of sharks and interviewed people. It's supposed to be a pretty cool documentary. I haven't not seen it. I would like to check it out.
The guy's got different interests. He did not want to be pigeonholed as a horror guy his whole career.
Of course, he is also the Bear Jew.
That's right.
Inglourious Bastards. He does dabble in acting still to this day. And as we mentioned, he returned to the horror genre in 2023 with the well-received Thanksgiving. What he's got cooking is a Thanksgiving sequel. Hopefully, I don't know, November 2025 feels ambitious if it's not filming already. So maybe 2026.
Okay.
And they're making Hostel into a TV series, which I will not be watching.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't like those movies at all. Let's talk about Mason. So I went over his resume to give some context because I think you were being just a little too praise happy.
Shooting from the hip.
But he does have a full slate of stuff coming up, so we could talk about that. He's got season 2 of The Last of Us, which I think is premiering this winter, maybe February, March.
I'm looking forward to that. I really love that. So like that alone, I'm ready to put Mason on a pedestal just for that piece of work.
And Chernobyl was fantastic too. Then he's got a couple movies in production, not in production, in pre-production or development, but he's got 3 Bags Full, Cowboy Ninja Viking. Wonder what that's about. And
interesting. He's
apparently writing an upcoming Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that's the oft-rumored Margot Robbie spinoff that they were talking about for years, but all it says is Untitled Pirates of the Caribbean project. So could be anything. Let's talk about Blanchett a little bit. She's had a pretty good run the last few years. She's done big budget superhero stuff like Thor, Ragnarok. She's done voice work in Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle, and How to Train Your Dragon, The Hidden World, which fucking rules.
Really?
Love the How to Train Your Dragon movies. Yeah, they're awesome. She's done her usual dramatic excellence in stuff like Nightmare Alley and Tar. Did you ever see Tar?
I did see Tar. I mean, that's where she's in her element as an actor.
Yeah.
Just kicking your ass with her shit she can do in a serious drama like that.
Yeah, Tar was wild ride. But she's also done a decent amount of comedies like Ocean's 8, Don't Look Up, Rumors.
Okay.
I know her character in Don't Look Up wasn't overtly humorous, but I did want to check out Rumors. I hear it's bananas. She was recently in the TV series Disclaimer, and then she's got the very exciting Black Bag coming up in 2025. I will be seeing that in the theater on opening weekend, probably by myself, because Soderbergh movies don't make money unless they're ocean Ocean's movies. Apparently.
Yeah, but that sounds fun. I'm looking forward to that.
And I'm just happy to see Fassbender like making good movies again.
He's the co-star with her?
I'd say he's really the star because she's,
Okay.
from what I understand, he spends a lot of the movie looking for her. So she's not necessarily, like, she looms large, but she's not necessarily in it all that much.
Makes sense.
And she also has father, mother, sister, brother in post-production. So
Okay.
she's staying busy. Let's talk about Kevin Hart. The only movies he did in 2024 were this and Lift, which I did not watch.
Okay.
He's done some TV appearances. He cameoed in Abbott Elementary. I know he's from the Philly area, so that makes sense. Fight Night, The $1 Million Heist, and then he did a voice role in Secret Level. I just assume he spends all his time filming credit card commercials and FanDuel commercials. Like, it seems like that takes up the majority of his creative space. But he does have 6 projects in development or pre-production, including a Monopoly movie. I don't know how that's going to work. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. They're remaking that, apparently.
Ooh, okay.
And Ride Along 3.
Yeah, all of that sounds like something Kevin Hart would do. I was so busy complaining about other things in this movie that I didn't even have time to mention that I'm totally not a fan of Kevin Hart. Always not found any of his comedy funny. Is that bad to say?
No, I've never liked him as a stand-up, and I don't think he can really carry a project. I always point to like his appearance in the 40-Year-Old Virgin as like the perfect Kevin Hart role. He's in it for a few minutes. He gets to be big and bombastic and loud, but it doesn't grate on you because it's so short.
Oh yeah,
He's
that
not
does
asked
sound
to do
good.
anything dramatic. Yeah, I don't have anything against him. I just don't like his ubiquitousness in the culture is obnoxious to me.
I mean, people like him, and also he hustles like a maniac. So kudos to him.
Good for him. Yeah, get your money. So Jack Black, he has done a lot of voice work recently. He was Bowser in the Super Mario Brothers movie. He's still Poe in the Kung Fu Panda movies. And he was just in the very bad Dear Santa playing Satan. That was a movie that I kept being like, when's that movie coming out? And I was like, oh, it's already on Amazon Prime.
It was out 2 weeks ago. It's that kind of movie.
Yeah. And he will play Steve, as I mentioned, in the abysmal looking Minecraft movie. Not looking forward to that because something tells me I will be seeing that one in the theater, much like Sonic the Hedgehog Part 3, which I just saw in theaters, but that is delightful.
The kids yearn for the mines, as they say, for the Minecraft.
They do. He's also got an Anaconda reboot coming out in late 2025, early 2026 somehow with Paul Rudd. Why is that funny to you?
That sounds like a joke, but Hollywood makes dreams into reality, and that's one of them.
So I do watch some of these channels on YouTube that are just trailers. It's like a loop of trailers, and like they update it like every couple days to include new ones that have come out. And they were like, watch the new Anaconda trailer. And the thumbnail was the big snake eating Jack Black or something. And then it's like the last trailer of the bunch. They make you sit through all the stuff. It's him and Paul Rudd in like a studio. And they're just like, yeah, we're making Anaconda. Like, it's going to be crazy. And then like, oh, have you seen the snake? He's in the back room. I think they're going to feed him soon. Let's go look. And then they like run off screen. I was like, that's the fucking trailer you guys advertised? You pieces of shit.
Just the pure teaser of like, this movie's not good, but we are Hollywood actors that you might like.
I don't think they have any footage yet. I don't think they've even started filming it.
They haven't even started.
They're like clearly on set, probably doing like rehearsals. And Paul Rudd's also got some kind of unicorn horror movie thing coming out with Jenna Ortega that looks weird.
Interesting.
That might be good. And Will Poulter. Edgar Ramirez, he's been doing a lot of TV work. He was in Florida Man, which I actually liked. It's streaming on Netflix, I believe. Like a Bad Monkey type of show.
Okay.
Which I know I told you about, but I don't think you ever watched.
Not yet.
I also never finished, I don't think. Wolf Like Me, and he was also in Dr. Death, which was a show I enjoyed.
Okay.
And then he was in Amelia Perez.
Yeah.
He's got 7 projects in some form of pre-production right now, so he's staying busy as well. And he's selling personal defense technology in his spare time.
Yeah, he's bulletproof in Hollywood.
And finally, Ariana Greenblatt. So she's got the shortest resume of all the major actors in this movie because she's very small and young. She was in Barbie.
That's a good credit.
Vaguely recall. Ahsoka.
Another good one.
And Secret Level, which seems like a lot of people were in. I don't even know what that's about. But then she has coming up Now You See Me 3, which should be called Now You 3 Me. But
it should.
I don't make the rules.
If there was any justice in the world.
Fear Street Prom Queen. And she's got a voice role as Velma in Scoob. You have to say it like that or it doesn't count.
You do. Thank you for saying that.
Holiday Haunt.
Okay.
So that wraps up Borderlands. Not hard to see why this movie failed. Little to no marketing, a inflated budget, a bad movie, and a fan base that has long since moved on.
Yeah, it all adds up.
Doesn't add up to much because $33 million is not a lot of money. That's worldwide.
No one's getting paid back on this one.
No. But no one's really getting paid back on next week's movie because one insane man leveraged his whole existence to pay for it.
He fronted all the money, so there's no one else to pay back but him and no one else to blame.
He sold 2 whole-ass wineries that have been profitable for decades to pay for this movie and nobody gave a shit. Like, it was only talked about to ridicule it.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah. I'll get all up into it. The monologue for next week's going to be like 8 pages long, I'm sure, because he's been trying to make this movie for 30 years.
Lord.
Maybe more, actually. It might be like 40 years. Yeah, we're talking, of course, about Megalopolis, which will be our next entrant in our 2024 retrospective.
In some ways, the biggest flop because it has decades of buildup.
And also, just like, it doesn't feel as bad to miss with Borderlands because you were aiming low.
Right.
He was aiming for the fucking moon. And you know that saying, aim for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land among the stars. Like, he somehow shot into the ground while aiming for the moon.
Yeah, he had the cannon pointed backwards, and it was just a disaster. Please, if you survived this far, you heard the end of our grueling Borderlands takedown, reward yourself. Come back next week. Listen to us talk about one of the most insane things ever put on film, because it's going to be wild.
This is the first time I've seen Ian like clearly nervous about an episode before it's been edited and released, where he thinks like, he's like, this episode's going to be so bad, people are going to leave us.
No, I'm sure it'll be fine. My standards are high, and so is my anxiety. So let's not let that spoil the fun. If you get a blast listening to this, God bless you. Thank you. You are what makes Blast Zone fandom special. You keep us going. Thank you.
On that note, thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us on Twitter at Blast Zone Pod or Blue Sky at BlastZonePod. I don't know how that whole thing works.
Whatever that is, get on there.
Look us up. You know how to find us. You can email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com, with questions, feedback, movie recommendations. You just want to chat movies. We always like hearing from you.
We do.
You can rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on all the usual places. We would appreciate it.
Really helps us.
And we'll see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.